don't write very much instrumental music, actually. I much prefer working with text for the reason that I always want to do something which has a message and has something to say.
In general, I'm interested in art that tries to change the world, basically. Art is a place in which you can do things and say things and try things that you can't in any other sort of domain of our society, at least.
This text has such a direct and engaging message that it's exactly the sort of thing that I want to work with.
Tom and Kate got a chance to find out whether their music could make a difference when they were sent 2 texts by clients of Freedom from Torture, a London charity. They described a medical examination its clients have to undergo as asylum seekers in this country.
On an April morning in 2005, 2 years after I had fled my country, I had to go and see a legal doctor. The Home Office had sent me a letter saying they were not satisfied with my account of what had happened to me in my country. So this doctor would be looking at the scars on my body
and writing up a report. I needed this report to make a new asylum claim to have some chance of staying here. They said they needed new evidence. The text has so clearly been written as a way of her understanding what happened by just putting it on a page. So it's amazing to then be the next person to engage with it and then the person whose job it is to share that with other people.
Kate and Tom had never met the writers when they sat down to compose. They only knew what they read on the page.
I was just told I had to go there for an examination. I had no idea what it was going to be about. I was very nervous. I had to wait until I was called, about 30 minutes, and I fell totally asleep. And then somebody woke me up and said, "It's time to go in."
We were sent a number of texts which were to do with the treatment of asylum seekers within the UK immigration system. So I chose a text which was framed by this personal story about when he went to have his MLR, the medical legal report. He's describing experiences where he's had to give an account of these things that have happened to him. This struck me as comparable to basically a musical performance, where what is uttered needs to be more constructed and more meaningful, and every little bit needs to be in its place.
Difficult to make contact.
I think music can change what people think about things and it invites you in and it invites you to experience something. That's what I want the music to do. I want to enable other people to understand what the text is saying. So, for example, when she says about being in the waiting room, the clinic was different from the other houses on the street. It looked like an ordinary office.
Was no different from the other houses on the street.
It's just very, very simple. It's very straightforward. It's just depicting what happened. But having that as your baseline means that when you make music behind that, you can depict everything around it, all the emotion around it, whatever it is that you want to say.
I decided fairly early on that I wasn't going to set the actual text to music, and I decided that it was going to be spoken all the way through.
It all starts with this phrase: try to be as brief as possible. Try to be as brief as possible.
What leapt out at me from the text was this initial bringing up of the injunction, try to be as brief as possible, and then the tension between that and the other injunction, only answer the question.
Only answer the question. Only answer the question. But how do you interpret that?
His text is very much about how insane it is to try and be brief in answering the question. There is no way of expressing all these things that have happened to you. And that is the question that they're asking you to only answer and to be brief in answering. So this incredible tension was going to be symbolized in the music between the piano and the quartet of voices.
But they had said to me, just answer the question.
I wrote this for Raphaella to sing, and very much with her voice and her presence in mind. It is all about the text and it is all about the vocal line. And it was really important that the person who did it was someone who really articulated and delivered the text, which she does beautifully.
I found myself wondering why I had never used the tub.
What I wanted to do with the instruments is frame that. So the soprano sings between these notes. So I've picked other instruments which won't get in the way of that. Essentially the voice is above everything and the viola and the bass clarinet support that.
What would happen now if he said he couldn't find any scarf?
There's a moment in the text where it becomes more specific, and he says, for instance, during my immigration case, I was asked whether I had contacted my family in the first 2 months
I was here. I said, and then find each other.
All the singers start on an accent on the N, and they all converge onto one single pitch, and it becomes this little tiny word that means nothing. But then he goes on to say all the different reasons behind why he couldn't contact his family.
How can I? It's difficult to make contact.
It's a kind of effusion of frustrated thoughts.
It's difficult. And nobody had more past than
I started with the end of the piece. In the doctor's room, she describes him looking at her scars and calling out to his assistant, who's actually also his daughter.
Scars that could only be the result of a sharp object. Cigarette burn, sharp object. Cigarette burn, sharp object.
And to me, that was the centre point of the piece. And then the text from here to the end is her describing, I was somewhere else, it wasn't me he was touching, but my body, that body I'd separated from myself. It's such a beautiful way of describing the feeling of not really, of the thing happening to you, but being unable to deal with it and separating yourself from it.
Kate and Tom wrote these works for a concert to raise awareness for freedom from torture. Both writers would be there and hearing the music for the first time.
I think when writing this, I had to completely forget about the fact that Stephanie was a real person that I might even meet. I can't pretend to know what it is that she went through or what that is like.
The fact that I was setting the words of someone who was eventually going to hear the music was always in my mind. So obviously I'm a little nervous.
As for my own story, now it's too late. That one answer made the judge think I was dishonest.
First of all, the music really surprised me. It was just surprising to see that the whole story could be translated into music.
Well, I can't have said my own self, my story, myself, my own answer. Too late, too late, too late, I can't say it.
It was bringing back the whole thing again. I saw myself caught when, those questions were being asked.
I went back to the hostel. That was it.
It brought back a lot of different scenarios and different stages of the asylum process, yeah. So, yeah, but in the end, I was just impressed and surprised.
I felt I was sinking.
I think it's incredibly important that something beautiful is made out of this, otherwise people won't have a way into it. And I feel like that's what I've tried to do, is paint behind her words some sort of emotional content that will give people a way to understand what the experience is.
To this day, I have no idea if there were curtains or not.
Listening to the music today, it was quite dramatic at one point. Yeah.
I dressed mechanically and came out. The daughter said I would be hearing
I do think that sharing that story with other people will enable them to understand how difficult it can be an asylum seeker and to go through the process of the asylum application and not being believed.
They wished me luck, I nodded, and left the room.
But I really like it. I think it was amazing. Yeah, it was.
That's one of the things about music. It wants to create change, the music wants to critique what's going on now, is that it's hopefully not necessarily going to be relevant in 100 years' time. Because that is what art is for, really. To allow people to say whatever and be heard.